Hello, my dear students. In this class, we will continue with the parts of speech, and in this class, we are going to study the adverbs. To start with, look at these two cars. Look at the first car. How did it move? Quickly or slowly? Yes, it moved quickly. Look at the other car. How did it move? It moved slowly. So the words quickly and slowly described the word move, and the word move is a verb. So, quickly and slowly are adverbs because they describe verbs. Let's see. What is an adverb? The adverb is usually used to add more details about verbs. Most adverbs that describe verbs end with ly. So this is how to form an adverb that describe a verb. We take an adjective and add to it the ly. The result will be the adverb. Let's see some examples. Clever is an adjective. We added the ly to the word clever, so it became an adverb. Cleverly is an adverb. So, cleverly, easily, suddenly, nicely, beautifully, happily, softly, greedily. All of these words are adverbs. They describe verbs. Where can I put the adverb in my sentence? Adverbs are usually placed, number one, after the main verb of the sentence. For example, he spoke softly. Now, spoke is the main verb in this sentence, and softly is the adverb that describes this verb. So it came after it. He spoke softly. Number two. Number two, if the sentence has an object, so this is a condition. Number two for sentences which have objects in them. For example, this sentence doesn't have an object, but number two speaks about sentences that have objects in them. Again, if the sentence has an object, place the adverb either before the verb or after the object. So, in sentences that have objects, I can put my adverb either before the verb or after the object. It's up to me. Let's see an example. Alan ate the chocolate greedily. So in this sentence, we have an object, which is the chocolate. Okay, and our verb is ate. How did Alan eat the chocolate? I have to describe the verb eat. How did Alan eat the chocolate? He ate it greedily. So after the object. Here, the adverb came after the object. After the object, the chocolate. Let's see the other example. Alan greedily ate the chocolate. It's the same sentence, but I changed the place of the adverb. Okay, in this sentence, I have an object also. So my sentence has an object. So I can place the adverb either before the verb or after the object. In the sentence, I placed my adverb before the verb. Before the verb. Alan greedily ate. Ate is the verb and greedily is the adverb. Alan greedily ate the chocolate. Again, the placement of adverbs in a sentence. Number one, after the main verb. Number two, in sentences that have objects in them, I have two choices. I can either put my adverb before the verb or after the object. Examples. He generously gave us the money. Here, in this sentence, I have an object, which is the money. So I put my adverb before the verb. Number two, I coughed loudly. This is coughing. In this sentence, there is no object. I have a main verb, so I put my adverb after the main verb. Number three, he reads Quran beautifully. Now, the word beautifully describes his reading. How did he read Quran? How does he read Quran? He reads Quran beautifully. Okay. In the sentence, I have an object and I put my adverb after the object. Four, the child ran happily towards his mother. In this sentence, I don't have an object. I have a main verb, which is ran, and I placed my adverb, not adjective, adverb, after the main verb. Okay, here is a task for you, my dear students. Open your booklets on page 28 and read the sentences under the title. Adverbs under this title. There are some sentences. Please open your booklets and read them. Try to find the adverbs. This is a task for you. Okay, here's another task. Open your booklets on page 29 and answer the first question on page 29. The question asks you to read the following sentences, underline the adverb, and circle the verb that it describes. So we are going to underline the adverbs and circle the verbs. Let's see. Number one, he glanced at me briefly. Okay, we know that the verb comes after the subject. He is the subject, glanced is the verb. What word in the sentence describes the verb? It is briefly and it ends with ly, so it is the adverb. Please underline the adverb and circle the verb. Number two, she thanked him lavishly. Lavishly means very much, a lot. Okay. After the subject comes the verb thanked. And how did she thank? She thanked him lavishly. Lavishly. So lavishly is a word that describes the verb thanked. So it ends with ly, so it's an adverb. And thanked is the verb. Please circle the verb and underline the adverb in your booklet. Number three, Kitty peered closely. Kitty peered closely at the gift. Kitty is the subject. After the subject comes the verb, so please circle the verb. Closely at the gift. Closely described the way she peered at the gift. So it ends with ly, so it is the adverb. Please underline this adverb and circle this verb. Number four, I lost my cat, the kid said sadly. Now, how did the kid say this sentence? He said it sadly. So sadly describes this verb. So this is the verb and this is the adverb. After you finish underlining all the adverbs and circling all the verbs, please check your work. These are the adverbs: briefly, lavishly, closely, sadly. These are the verbs: glanced, thanked, peered, said. Here's another task for you, my dear students. Open your student's book on page 55 and do exercise 1. Now open the student book. Okay, the question asks you to write out these sentences, underline the adverbs, and draw a ring round the verbs that go with them. Please, I don't want you to rewrite these sentences. You can just underline the adverbs on your book, on your student book itself. Don't rewrite these sentences, okay? Just on your student book, underline the adverbs and circle the verbs. So you are going on your student book to underline the adverbs and circle the verb. A. As he spoke, he was looking at Jude, but he did glance at me briefly. Okay, now briefly ends with ly, so it is the adverb. But which verb does it describe? Yes, it describes the verb glance. How did she glance? How did he glance? He glanced briefly. How did he glance? He glanced briefly. So, circle the verb glance and underline the adverb briefly. Okay. B. He peered closely at a photo of me as a toddler. The word closely is the adverb that ends with ly, and it describes the verb peered. Peered is the verb which the word closely describes. So please underline closely as an adverb and circle peered, which is the verb. Closely describes the verb peered. C. What a face, he said admiringly. Okay, how did he say this sentence? How did he say the sentence? What a face. He said it admiringly. So admiringly is an adverb that describes the verb said. So please, my dear students, underline admiringly because it is the adverb and circle the verb said. When you finish, please check your work. In sentence A, did glance is the verb and briefly is the adverb that describes this verb. Sentence B, peered is the verb and closely is the adverb that describes this verb. What a face! Said is the verb and admiringly is the adverb that describes this verb. Okay, another task for you, my dear students. It is on your student's book, page 55, but this now exercise number 2. This exercise asks you to rewrite these sentences, changing the adverbs so that they are more interesting. We are going to find more interesting adverbs. Okay? No need to rewrite the sentences in your classwork notebook. Just underline the adverbs. In sentence A, sadly is the adverb. Let's read the sentence. I forgot my packed lunch, said Samir sadly. So sadly is the adverb. Please underline it. And because it's the adverb, let's try to find another word, another more interesting word that gives the same meaning as sadly. Any correct word that is an adverb and gives the same meaning as sadly is acceptable. But I will give you an example. Example of a more interesting word for the word sadly is gloomily. So on your student books, Please just underline the word sadly and write any interesting word that gives the meaning of sadly. Gloomily is just an example for you. Sentence B. Mara walked away quickly. So, how did Mara walk? She walked quickly. So, quickly is an adverb that describes the verb walked. So, please underline the word quickly and try to find any other interesting verb that gives the same meaning as quickly. So any adverb that gives the same meaning of quickly is acceptable. I will give you an example. Quickly means speedily. Speedily is an adverb and quickly is another adverb. But speedily is more interesting than quickly. C. Dean shook his head crossly. How did Dean shook his head? He did it. He shook his head crossly. Sorry, how did Dean shake his head? He shook his head crossly. Another word for crossly is heatedly. Okay, angrily. Any word you like that gives the same meaning. Here I chose heatedly for you. Please underline the adverbs and write other more interesting adverbs instead of these adverbs. Okay. Another task for you, my dear students. Open your workbooks on page 32 and do exercise 1. So now you're going to open your workbook. Page 32, please. Okay. In this question, you are going to underline the adverbs in these sentences and draw a circle round the verb. Here are the answers. I stupidly put the ice cream in the oven instead of in the freezer. So stupidly is an adverb that describes put. Jonathan jumped around excitedly. So excitedly is the adverb that described jump. Jumped is the verb. Samira looked sadly out of the window. So sadly is the adverb that ends with ly and it describes looked. Looked is the verb. Yippee! We've got my favorite food for dinner, yelped Mika delightedly. Delightedly is an adverb that ends with an ly and it described the verb yelped. Rafiq clumsily dropped his glass on the floor. Dropped is the verb and clumsily is an adverb that describes this verb. F. Miserably, Santi plodded home. How did Santi plod home? She plodded home miserably. So miserably is the adverb and plodded is the verb that comes after the subject Santi. G. Never mind, Michael. Ella whispered softly. Softly is the adverb that describes the verb whispered. Mr. Wrong loudly shouted, "Go back to your seats at once." Loudly is the adverb that describes the verb shouted. Please, when you underline the adverbs in your workbooks and circle all the verbs, check your work. And by this, we will come to the end of our class. Thank you all, my dear students.